Hello, everyone. My name is Priscilla Chetaika with Financial Poise and Daily DAC, and I'll be your moderator today. Our panelists are Eduardo Campos of Embedded Knowledge Incorporated. Will tell you a little bit about himself.
Hello, everybody. I've been doing this for way too many years, collaborating with experts like Alex here, that is going to be with me. And I appreciate the opportunity. As a former Chief Information Security Officer, former consultant, I've been on the two sides of the bar. So I'm here to share, and every time we share, we learn.
Thank you for joining us, Eduardo. We also have Alex Sharp of Sharp LLC. Do you want to say a bit about yourself, Alex?
Sure, thank you, Priscilla. So it's always a pleasure to do these with Eduardo and Priscilla. We've had the benefit of doing a number of them. They're always very well received. And to Eduardo's point, I always walk away learning something, and you can't ask for more than that. But like Eduardo, I've been in this business for a very long time. I'm a practitioner, so I've been a CIO, a CISO. I've worked with regulators. I've helped develop legislation. Most of my work has been, working with senior leaders and putting their cybersecurity programs and privacy programs together. Now, a lot of what I do is around resilience and also the governance of AI. That's where most of my time is spent these days.
Thank you for joining us, Alex. And for our panelists' full bios, please refer to slides 48 and 49. You'll also find their contact information. Before we get started, just a quick disclaimer. The material on this webinar is for informational purposes only. It should not be considered legal, financial, or other professional advice. We've also provided a webinar and series description on slides 7 and 8. And be sure to check out our 3 previous episodes of this series. Just to get us started, Eduardo, could you please give us a bit of information on what the difference is between data security incidents and a data breach?
Sure. This is good because we usually have a confusion here. An incident is when an event that threatens data systems, it didn't happen yet. It might not be even happening, and it is still an incident. It could be a password that is lost, but nothing happens. It could be a screen of a computer that was left on, confidential information on paper on the desks. The breach is when the information that is protected, the data that is protected, is accessed or disclosed without authorization because someone left a password in the open, someone left confidential information on the desk, and an unauthorized party accessed or disclosed that information without authorization. Because I like to use analogies, think as an incident as someone that is just rattling your door handle, is trying to enter your house, while a breach is when they actually get inside. So it happens.
That's an amazing analogy, Eduardo. So just a few stats. Apparently, the global cost of data breaches rose to 4.5 million. And for the US, the average total cost climbed slightly to 9.48 million. Alex, what do you make of these numbers?
Well, they're going to go up, right? That's the short answer. They're going to go up. They do every year. We'll probably see some plateaus at some point, but we're not there. There's also a wide spread depending on sector, right? So when you look into the numbers, it's not only geography, but it's also sector, and it's also the size of your organization. And the way the impact is manifests itself is also very different. So I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but overwhelmingly, if you're a small business, the greatest impact to you can be going out of business. It's actually scary how more than half of small and medium-sized businesses actually go out of business, after a breach. So it's kind of inconsequential about the total cost because it's it's as disruptive can be. The other part is it's not just the immediate cost. We are finding longer and longer tails to get these situations involved, to get them resolved, excuse me. Uh, Probably the best example of that is the Target incident that happened in 2013. Target was, had an incident because the supplier that actually did remote management on their heating and ventilation system was compromised, and some malicious actors used that and get into Target, and they stole a lot. There's, credit card information, financial transactions, and alike. Well, that incident happened in 2013. The last lawsuit wasn't settled until 2024. So it's not only the initial impact, but it's the long-term impact you have to look at. And depending on your sector and size, it could be an existential event. So these numbers are important, but they don't tell the full story. The business impact is usually much larger than just these numbers, which go up every year.
And Alex, are there certain sectors that are at greater risk of breaches, in your opinion?
Well, the short answer is yes, right? The There's a famous quote. Willie Sutton, bank robber, was once asked, "Why do you rob banks?" And without missing a beat, he's like, "That's where the money is." Right? So, what a surprise. Financial institutions tend to get hit much more frequently than nonprofits because nonprofits don't have the money, right? Smaller businesses don't get hit as often as because they have less. They can't pay ransoms. There's less to steal. One of the big exceptions is you get the truly malicious actors like the nation states and the APTs who are more interested in stealing your intellectual property than getting cash out of you. They're going to go after the small agile business that entire business is based on their IP. Right. So it really does depend. And if you look at the numbers, one of the things we've seen is healthcare being attacked more. And we have also seen a constant increase in manufacturing. One of the big reasons for manufacturing is when you disrupt the manufacturing business, it 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 is costing the company huge amounts of money. So they are more willing to pay a ransom to get back online than other businesses would be. So short answer is yes. And there's lots of studies about this.
And another interesting stat is that it takes around 287 days on average to find out about a data breach. That sounds like a really long time. Eduardo, what are some of the indicators that you've been compromised?
Well, what we see is that when um, something weird is happening, we see computers rebooting. Um, it seems like someone is operating your computer remotely because it keeps changing the screens, or the network is really slowed down a lot. So you might just be on the skeptical side and really ask your team to investigate. It's like when we are at home and at night and we start hearing noises on the roof, and we see we hear some bangs, and it might be someone trying to enter the house. So we should really pay attention to it, because suddenly things can go very, very suddenly. They can get very, very hard, and everything can be out of the reach because you didn't pay attention to the early signs.
And Eduardo, most small businesses may not have a huge IT department, or the founders and many of the employees may not be tech savvy. Do you think it takes a longer time for smaller businesses compared to bigger businesses to find out about these breaches?
It might find, if you do not prepare your team members, and usually someone that discovers what's going on is someone that is non-tech, that is prepared to identify those signs, passwords that are kept changing, information that is being transferred at high amounts without any explanation. So when you are a small business, you have to rely on everyone. From the top down, you have to prepare everybody. When you are a larger organization, you might have IT departments, information security departments, even incident recovery teams. But for the smaller organizations, we must prepare everyone to identify those signs.
Alex, what should businesses know about recent changes in cybersecurity policies and coverage?
Well, first I want to go back to something Eduardo said. I had a smile when he talked about hearing somebody on your roof with, with the holidays quickly approaching, to his point, it's not always Santa. And, that's one of the things that we have to worry about in cyber. You may have heard the term living off the land, which is a fancy way of saying malicious actors are using tools that are very common to your enterprise. So they fall under the radar and they're harder to detect, right? So, trying to break into your house acting like you're Santa, there's movies about that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, it's a really good analogy. But the changes in policies and regulations and the like, the world has been evolving in that space for quite some time, until the current administration was moving forward rather aggressively, and it's slowed down to some extent. But the major drivers we're seeing, and I spend a fair amount of time in this space, is they become more risk-based. And I put that in quotes, because those of us who have been in the corporate environment for a number of years understand what that means. And unfortunately, most cyber folks throw around the words, but they really don't understand what it means. Also, as part of that, cyber has become recognized as a valid part of the business. So if you look at where we are today, most revenue is driven by digital assets, whether it be online transactions, intellectual property, data, what have you. It's driven by digital. And most of the assets that are driving corporate values are intangible, which is a fancy way of saying software and people, intellectual property. So for that reason, businesses have basically stepped on the cyber battlefield. And if you've ever played a sport, offense is great, that's how you score, but you need defense to ensure that they don't take out your quarterback or they don't score against you, right? And that's the role of cyber. It protects your business. So we've seen more risk-based, we've seen more alignment with the business. We are also seeing recognition of the world we live in today, that more of the assets we protect are outside of the business, they're in the cloud. And we have very extensive supply chains and third-party interactions. These have all changed the way we look at our cyber world, and regulations, like you would expect, are catching up. They always lag, but they're catching up. And in many ways, businesses have recognized the change and they're getting there faster than the regulators and the legislatures are. A lot there.
And Alex, what kind of advice are you giving to clients about cyber insurance?
Ha. Um, That is a conversation in itself. So let's go back for a second. In risk management, in broad strokes, there are four treatments. You can accept a risk, you can avoid a risk, you can mitigate, or you can transfer. Transfer insurance, the primary way of transferring is insurance. So we saw for a time that everybody was going, "Oh, I need cyber insurance. I need cyber insurance." And you know, as incidents started to happen, we saw that's a much more costly um, alternative because the insurance companies realized that it wasn't priced appropriately. The world has changed. They got to put more constraints on it. So it's not as straightforward as it was at one time, right? There's a lot of limitations, there's a lot of requirements. So it's always something to look at, but that should be not your primary. It's what you think of for handling what remains after you have gone through the others, right? Is it a risk I'm willing to take? Can I avoid it by changing my approach or strategy, which is gaining in popularity? We're starting to see that now that cyber is part of the discussion on the early end, and then mitigation, right? So after we hit those three pieces, then and only then do we start looking at cyber insurance. And within that, it it's as not of a straightforward conversation as it was at one time because of exclusions and requirements and what is really considered to be a cyber incident. It's much more convoluted than ever.
And Alex, some policies often require notifying insurers before hiring investigators or counsel. Why is
Well,
that?
that's part of why it's not as straightforward as it used to be. So there are and the industries are still figuring this out, right? Some insurance companies are better at than others. So they require to be noticed. They require approval of anybody that you bring on to help work an incident. If you're dealing with ransomware, they they might have a list of negotiators and brokers that you have to work with. So if you want to go outside of that, you may need to get them put on the list. There are conflicts of interest um, about who gets notified when, and there's a lot of pieces with that. There can also be issues because a lot of legal departments, and this is definitely a conversation to have with outside counsel who understands the cyberspace. A lot of times, legal wants everything to flow through them, so to protect confidentiality, attorney-client privilege, but understanding what that means and doesn't mean, and also how the insurance company fits into that can be quite nuanced. Again, it's figuring itself out in the industry, but more than likely, if you've never been through it before, it's not what you expect. There's a lot of bad advice. There's a lot of bad free advice out there. That's the best way to summarize it.
Mhm. And the company's internal responses are also important. Eduardo, what's an incident response plan and why must businesses test it?
Well, I want to connect that back to what Alex was saying because things changed so much, and we used to do incident responses before, and things got complicated with cyber insurance policies became so different one from another. It's like a medical plan where you believe that all the treatments and all the reimbursements are going to be the same, but when you read the fine print, you discover it's not true. So that's why you need really to work together with your legal department. If you don't have a legal department, to work a legal expert that can help you with that. And the instant response plan is a structured playbook, and usually it's required in those policies. That structured playbook in written, it's not something that's in somebody's head, guides the technical, the business, but something that we technical people forget a lot. Covers also the legal actions during breach. Who should we inform? Who informs the insurance company? Who informs the regulator? Who talks to the FBI? Who talks to the local police if the state requires, and so on. Also, that playbook covers regular testing, how it should happen. The regular testing is important because ensures people know their roles. And we must practice the plans. It's not some plan that is just getting dust on the shelf. So that the plan really works under pressure. It's like a fire drill that we have fire drills in schools, in companies. You don't want to learn the escape route for the first time during a real fire. So the same with the incident response plan. You don't want to discover what to do in the middle of an incident. So the incident response plan is important because of that.
Thanks, Eduardo. Alex, what exactly are tabletop exercises?
Tabletop is basically a way of simulating or working through your incident response plan, right? So a plan, there's only something to remember about a plan the day you write it is it's wrong. If you knew how it was wrong, you change it. And one of the things that a tabletop does is it exercises the plan and gets you to work through it. It starts forming muscle memory. So to Eduardo's point, the time to figure out where the fire exits are is not when you're having a fire. If you have time to buy a fire extinguisher is before, your stove catches fire. Because let's face it, you got a fire on the stove. You're not going to go, let me run to Lowe's or Home Depot and get a fire extinguisher, right? That's a really bad time to do that. It's a very bad time. Or, when the house is full of smoke and you're not sure if everybody got out and all, and then you sit there and go, where's the emergency exit in the building? Those are really, really bad times to do those things. It don't get any worse. And the same is true with these incidents. Sometimes these incidents are referred to as the worst day of your life. And having been through more than my fair share of them, I can tell you that's true. And it never goes right. It never goes according to plan. These malicious actors aren't executing according to your plan. Something's always different. Some key person is out of pocket. They're on vacation. It happens on a weekend. It happens on a holiday. Sometimes they're all essential. So having the basic mechanics worked out and turned into muscle memory makes your life a whole lot better. And a tabletop is a very quick way or a very straightforward way of doing that uh, without having to go through the real world stress that's going to occur. It's basically a simulation, a dry run.
A dry run. Eduardo, most people are familiar with Chief Information Officer. Most people aren't too familiar with Chief Information Security Officer. Are these different roles and how are they different?
Yes, they are. The Chief Information Security Officer, the CISO, as the role is known, is focused on protecting the organization from cyber threats. The CIO, the Chief Information Officer, is focused on enabling the business with technology and operations. So they collaborate. And it's typical now that we have the CISO that are usually reported to the CIO being a peer because of the amount of risks and how high the losses are that you described in the beginning of the webinar. So if we can compare, if IT is a city, the CIO is the city planner, is the one enabling the city, while CISO would be the chief of police. So the CISO is in charge of working together with IT, with the business, with the boards, the C-suite, to put together the information security plan, the policies, procedures, training, the connection with all the departments, and being part of the incident response plan team. Usually, depending on the organization, the size of the organization, the CISO is also the one in charge of the incident response plan, but not necessarily. I've worked with several clients that have a different set for the incident response plan. But in a nutshell, the CISO collaborates with the CIO, but they are different roles.
Thanks, Eduardo. And Eduardo, another important point in this AI era is that AI-driven phishing and device cloning are becoming more sophisticated. How should businesses adjust their monitoring and detection programs?
Well, like Alex was saying in the beginning, everything is digital now. When even Starbucks is known as a tech company because their Starbucks app is such a big part of their business that they are really focused on the digital side to enable selling coffee. So in this time of AI-driven phishing, device cloning, impersonation, fake videos, it's important to strengthen what we call behavioral analytics. That is, analyzing, using AI, analyzing huge amounts of data to identify strange behaviors. Somebody that is not in China, has not been to China lately, is trying to connect from China at midnight into my bank. Something is weird. Somebody that is during Christmas time to the holiday season time is trying to buy large amounts of gift cards at Target from some place in Latin America, and something is not really correct. Three different access from the same person in different continents are happening at the same time. Something is wrong. So it's really analyzing those behaviors, and it's huge amount of data for that. Many organizations are doing this already with success. The other thing is enforce multi-factor authentication. That is having not only the passwords, but some action you have to take. So you type your password and you get a code in your phone through an SMS or in your email, so that you prove that it makes more difficult for the criminal to impersonate someone. Also, monitor those unusual identity-based activities. Someone that is working on a building, accessing their systems, and then suddenly the same identity tries to access information remotely or from another building. So it's important to investigate those technical anomalies. Actually, larger organizations have software, AI-based software that can do that automatically, and what we call harden the network, the access, so that it becomes more difficult for the attacker to just penetrate and create issues in the network. It's like the same thing as checking IDs at the door. When we were all young and we're going to parties, we had to show the IDs for people for the one that was controlling the door, check our IDs, but also noticing the behavior. So I'm 16 years old and I present an ID and I'm behaving, I'm nervous, and so I'm not the person I'm claiming to be. So it's really not only trusting what I have in front of me, but also checking the behavior.
And Alex, are you seeing many small businesses use AI to detect threats, or are you just seeing this with large companies?
A lot of that comes down to how small is small.
Mm-hmm.
Now, here's a little metric. If you look at the official government statistics, small and medium-sized businesses can be up to $1 billion in revenue, right? So how small is small becomes a question. The short answer is they're all trying. The tools aren't necessarily there yet. There's some good startups. There's some excellent work going on with some of the major vendors. And I suspect, I know for a fact everybody is looking at how do you use AI for pretty much everything these days. Vulnerability management is probably going to be one of the bigger areas. So I expect to see more of that. And I expect to see more success. And let me dig into that a bit. If you look at the primary sources of incidents, how incidents happen, unpatched vulnerabilities and misconfigurations are always in the top of the list. They're not always number one. They're rarely number one. Number one is usually misalignment with the business. But put that aside, misconfigurations, unpatched vulnerabilities, human error are always up in the top list. So, how do we get around that? We look at automation. When you look at the number of vulnerabilities that are appearing, the number's increasing. How do you do that? Automation. If you look at the speed, the velocity from some time that something is announced to the time we see the first incident. Now, there used to be a metric that was tracked in the industry that's no longer valid for a lot of reasons. It was called Twitter to attack. How how soon after a tweet came out about a new vulnerability till we saw an attack in the field? That metric stopped getting used when it was under 2 hours, right? Because it started to become useless. So for all these reasons, the prevalence, the damage, the velocity, the sheer volume, the complexity, for all those reasons, there is a clamoring in the industry to use more and more automation to triage, prioritize, and do the patching. Small and medium.
Go
Let
ahead,
me
Alex.
let me tie that off. Small and medium-sized businesses historically are understaffed for a lot of reasons. Um, so for them, the automation is even more critical. And since more often than not, they actually outsource many parts of their IT and InfoSec functions, their information security functions, the folks that supply to them, if they have their act together, and I'm couching that very carefully, if they're managing their business well and they're focused on their clients, they are going to provide automated solutions to help their clients because that's the only way they can scale profitably. So there's a lot of reasons for automation, whether it be AI or not. AI just happens to be the one that is the most popular and shows the most long-term value. Go ahead. Sorry.
You just answered the question. I was going to ask, how do companies, who's going to help companies implement some of these automation systems?
Can I add something?
Go ahead, Eduardo.
It's interesting because I had this conversation with Small Business Association and their members, and they were saying, "But this is expensive. We cannot have a CISO. It's very technical." And like Alex was saying, we had companies with 5 people up to 300 people. We had companies with $1 million revenue up to $200 million of revenue. So you had all kinds of small businesses. But one thing that some of them were doing was relying on their cloud providers, so
Yep.
relying or because one of them said, I decided to rely on my cloud provider, Oracle, Microsoft, Amazon, doesn't matter which one, because their service offers me 70%, about 70% of what I need. So it's not perfect, but today I have zero protection and I have zero awareness. And they're offering me something, oh, but because you are going to be dependent on, but this is the immediate fix that you can rely on someone to help you immediately, and then you gain some time to figure out a better strategy, right? Before something happens. So it could be, and what Alex is saying, you have plenty of AI startups now that are very reputable, and that can be a short fix. It's not the best situation. It's not it's not cover everything, but it's better than zero.
Alex, that raises an important question. When these AI automation systems fail, who's ultimately responsible for the breaches?
Oh boy, let's ask an easy question. So when these things fail, so there's a couple different parts to that. Because AI, when we talk about AI, it's actually a class of things. It's not one thing, where most people these days, what they focus on is these large language models, in particular, generative AI, right? It writes text for me, it corrects my grammar, it creates these images, it creates deep fakes, stuff like that. But that's not the only class. There's a lot of pieces. There, it's very clear that in all the legislation, that if you have built a system that is being used on for your business or consumers, at the end of the day, you are liable. You're accountable. Now, what does that mean and what is the extent? So without going into it right now, there's 48 jurisdictions in the United States that have specific laws about this. Now, interestingly enough, there's actually 54 jurisdictions in the US, and that's when usually go, wait a minute, we only have 50 states. Well, there's DC, then there's the possessions, and technically the tribal nations, if they wanted, can write some of their own laws depending on their constitutions. But we have 48 in the US. They all say, you built the system, you deployed it, you're accountable. Then they go on and talk about all the things you're supposed to do and the nature of the accountability. So it changes a lot. In general, and this is very important to sit down with um, your legal counsel. In general, the states are going down the road that if you do everything right, you do everything reasonable, you're transparent, you've acted in good faith. It's like everything else we see in business law. Bad things can happen, and you're allowed to make mistakes for the right reasons. So, who's accountable? You built it, you deploy it, you're accountable. What that translates into when something goes wrong depends on how you behaved and the particular nature of the use case and the states involved. This is a conversation you absolutely have to have with your legal counsel. One other thing to point out is in the world of use cases, particularly around AI, the general trend globally, and you find this best documented in the EU AI Act. It basically says AI use cases go anywhere from, we don't care, to don't even think about it. And the don't even think about it are the ones that, truly violate rights or can cause loss of life. Like, I like to say a fully autonomous weapon system is a war crime waiting to happen. That's a prohibited use case, right? You can't just go around and create, systems that could kill somebody if they go wrong, right? Think of every bad AI movie you've ever seen, right? 2001 Space Odyssey, the Predator movie, excuse me, Terminator movies, right on down the list. These machines go wild and they hurt people. Prohibited, right? So that's something else to keep in mind. What does the jurisdictions that you are obligated to follow state about what you can do and can't do? So not an easy question, but those are the trends.
Eduardo, do you have anything to add?
Yes, I'm a optimistic optimistic person, but we have to be prepared as security professionals for the worst. And what Alex is saying is not to scare anybody; it's the reality. We need especially if you are working with your legal team, you have to envision the worst case scenario now, because in the case it happens, the it's a way to hide the risk, to not to the impact, not to weigh in the risk. It's so we are moving into a scenario year over year where we will need to have this kind of conversation while we are living the normal life. We saw the case of the Ukrainian drone attacking scenario, attacking planes in Russia earlier in this year. So the attack was enabled by an AI engine they created to capture images and so on to guide the attack to the targets. So it is the case that Alex is just describing just happened. So we need to think of things like that now when we can, not because we are all doomed and the world's gonna fall, the sky's gonna fall, but it's because it's the reality, and we better prepare when we are living our normal lives than when something happens.
And Eduardo, once a breach is detected, the question becomes, how do we respond and in what order? What kind of advice do you give to companies?
So I know that Alex, like myself, we like to follow the NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology in the US. Although it's a US effort, it's so good that they work with the community, they work with the experts, that it's adopted everywhere in the world. Many countries adopt or base their own incident response strategies on that. On the slides, we have a slightly different set of steps, but they are almost the same. It means we need to have the identify step where we identify what's happening, contain the incident, investigate it, to identify the causes, the impact, and so on. Notify the parties, notify the authorities, the regulators, the police, the FBI, and then remediate. That is, what happened now? How can we recover? How can we go back to where we were? So what is important, if you're following this or you're following what is on the slides, is that you take steps to ensure quick action. You don't want to be thinking of the incident when it happens. So you train it, you have a plan, and you have steps. Legal compliance is important here, so that you ensure that whatever policy you have, you are not going to break the rules and invalidate clauses. And also think of long-term improvements. We always learn from mistakes and from failures. But in a nutshell, it's like a medical triage. First, you have to if someone gets to the emergency room, the doctors have to diagnose what's going on, stabilize the patient, understand what are the injuries, inform the family, they respond, and then the recovery that is remediate, that is prevented from happening again. So in summarizing is about adopting those steps. Could be your customized steps, but or could just follow the NIST cybersecurity framework: that identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. But it's in summary, it is something like that.
Thanks, Eduardo. And Alex, within the first 24 hours of a breach, when there's a lot of panic, what should companies absolutely avoid doing?
Ha. Panic. Number one thing to do is avoid panic. Number two thing to do is avoid panic. Number three thing to do is to help other people avoid panic. And I say that it sounds like tongue in cheek. It is, but it's absolutely true. What I have found time and time again, when things go wrong, it's usually because of something that was done the first day or was not done before the incident. And then you spend the rest of your time cleaning up, frankly, things that should never have had to been cleaned up. Let me let me give you an example. I still laugh at this. When I found out about it, I had to bite my tongue. A law firm in the United States got hit with a ransomware incident. Machines were locked up. They had received a notice through a screen that said, what was going on. We exfiltrated your data. Have a senior executive call us. We'll prove to you proof of life that we have some of your data, blah, 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 blah. So fired up the team. Somebody in HR, the personnel department, says, you know what? We can't operate today. We should let people know not to come in the office. Not a bad idea. So one of the things they did is they put up a big sign in the hallway of this office building, like a 30-story office building, some big office building that had more than just their firm in there, that said, we had a cyber incident today. Don't come into the office, go home. Do you want to guess what happened? They were flooded with calls from clients and partners and news media, just dealing with, hey, we saw the sign in your office. What's going on? The cyber folks couldn't respond because they were being inundated with everything else, right? So they're trying to do their jobs. They have the firm's board of directors calling the cyber folks, asking what's going on. And, my answer would have been nothing, because I'm spending all my time returning your calls, right?
Mhm.
So it's really, don't panic, don't panic, don't panic. Keep the knucklehead crap out of your way. One of the things I often tell teams when we're we're doing stuff like this in tabletops, board members, they're great for this, right? But they don't know the answer. They don't expect it when you answer. What can I do to help? Keep everybody out of my way,
Mm.
right? Fantastic piece of advice, because panicking helps nobody. The threat actors are going to do everything they can to fire you up and make your life miserable. Don't let them. Don't let your own team help you. Um, what was the other thought I just had around that? Oh, life is going to get in the way. Every
Mhm.
incident I've ever worked, somebody's on vacation, somebody's unreachable because of travel, somebody's in the hospital, the backup's not available, something doesn't work, right? Something you depended on and worked in practice is not working now. Between the threat actors and life, you're going to have enough crazy stuff going on. Don't let your own organization work against you. Keep them out of your way. Find somebody to run defense for you and to keep the knucklehead stuff off your plate, because you got real things to do.
On the point of defense, Alex, after panic probably comes blame. Should companies be looking to their cyber team or trying to look at hiring an outside team?
Um, yes, yes. Now, one of the things you have to be careful of is the difference between blame and accountability. So I am a huge advocate, huge, 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 huge advocate that after any incident, You sit down and you have a no nonsense post-mortem. What went right? What didn't go right? Where can we improve? What works? What doesn't work? And part of that conversation should be, what's the root cause of all this? What's the problem? Right? Is it avoidable? Is it not avoidable? Are there people on their team that are great people, but they're just not suited for incident response? And there's nothing wrong with
Uh,
that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. There's people I love that are, they're fantastic at their jobs, but they're not the people that you want during an incident when you need to be sleeping in the data center because it's not in their personality. And there's nothing wrong with that. So there's a delicate balance between being accountable, learning lessons, and blame. It's a very delicate balance, in part because you can honestly be thinking about making the world a better place and trying to get to understanding the root cause and make valid improvements. And just the sheer fact that you're dealing with humans, they could look at it as, they could perceive it as being blamed when they're not. It's an incredibly delicate balance. It's very easy to talk about when you're an individual contributor. It's incredibly difficult to execute the further you get up the chain.
Go ahead, Eduardo.
Yes, this is right on point, Alex, about the blame, about the people that have the right skills or not. I saw a case where the CISO, she she's very knowledgeable and experienced. She hired a consulting company, an HR consulting company, to help her in running the tabletop exercise. So they did a simulation of an attack. So they created a scenario together with the company, and it's a 2 a.m. It's Thanksgiving, and your CIO calls and everything went wrong. You had a ransomware case and everything's locked down. And only with the tabletop exercise, two of the team members were almost crying
Yeah.
under pressure. So that's the case. They are not prepared. They will likely not be the first ones on the top. Very knowledgeable people, very good at what they do, but they are not prepared for this kind of thing. You can imagine if it were a real case. So that's why it's important that we do this post-mortem. In this case, they were doing an exercise, pre-mortem, before it happens, and then analyzing why things were so bad, why people were blaming each other. They started fighting halfway the exercise, fighting each other, blaming each other, and it was just an exercise.
Yeah.
So because of his skills, so I like what you mentioned here, Alex. The right people doing the right job.
Yeah. I often say you have to have the right people in the right seats on the right bus. Yeah.
Absolutely.
There's you actually started the question about asking about bringing in outsiders. Four things you want outsiders for.
Yeah.
Forensics, because this might lead to a litigation, and you need a third party that knows how to handle the evidence. And objective third parties are always better witnesses than employees of the company. The second is if you're dealing with a ransomware situation, more than likely you don't have a cryptocurrency account, so you need somebody who handles that broker. Ransomware negotiators, there's people that do that. They do this all the time. They have insight into particular threat actors, what their tendencies are. Are they good about actually returning the data or destroying it? Those kinds of things. And number four, which is often forgotten about, is Christmas help. Remember, when you're in the great time of the year to talk about this, when you're in the midst of an incident, your day job doesn't stop, right? The day job is still happening. And just because you've been up for 36 hours working an incident, or you've been up for 16 at a time, sleeping in a data center or on the floor, wherever, local hotel, I've seen all sorts of situations. That doesn't mean your day job is stopped, right? So augmenting your team with people that have the right skills, they've been brought up to speed on your enterprise, um, bringing them in to help makes a big difference, right? So those are the four areas. Every time I do a list like this, I always think I'm missing one, which I may not be, but if I am, you'll figure it out.
Mhm. And Eduardo, I just want to talk a little bit about the simulations you were referring to. If your company fails in these simulations, should companies be panicking? Should they be thinking about hiring new people? How should they respond?
Well, dealing with managers when they're dealing with people, they in any kind of situation you're going to have this reaction, right? So you have to think about if they're good at what they do, maybe you should keep them doing what they do. If they can learn with training, with upskilling, then you invest on that. But I leave it to the situation that Alex mentioned of hiring Christmas help because we were going through an incident, a cybersecurity incident, and we had to run a company, and it took a week to properly respond and things recover and so on. If we had to do that while we were working our daily jobs, we'd be in trouble. And the attackers are just waiting to see if you are going to lower your defenses, and then a new attack might come in, and a new problem might start. So you really need to be able to prepare people in advance. That's why you do the exercises, or just realize they are not the right people for that kind of job. They will do the regular job, but not in the case of an incident or in the case of crisis they will be allocated to do something else or just to run the daily work.
Thanks, Eduardo. And Alex, when should a business report a breach to the FBI or other law enforcement agencies?
All right, thank you for another easy one. There's two parts of the answer. There are legal requirements, and then there's business requirements. Under the business side, it's up to you. My personal experience is you should always engage the FBI. You should make friends with, or let me phrase it differently. You should build a relationship with your local FBI field office long before an incident ever occurs. And there's a couple reasons for that, and let me explain them. First and foremost, this is what they do every day. They have a lot of insight. They can help you a lot, and they do. So quite often with an incident or a breach, Mark Twain said history doesn't always repeat itself, but it quite often rhymes, especially with ransomware. I have worked situations where the FBI had the key to unlock the ransomware from a previous incident. So organizations save themselves tens of millions of dollars in ransom payments. They just got the key from the FBI. I know that certain situations after a breach, the malicious actors will dump the data on what's commonly referred to as a dump site. The FBI can usually find those dump sites and get your information for you or destroy it before the threat actor can do something nefarious with it. So there's a lot of advantages. So it's information, they can get you keys, they can coach you through things. They basically help you create more informed decisions. There's another factor here that doesn't often give the attention that I think it should, because most of the time it's like, oh, when do I get law enforcement involved? Do I want law enforcement in my business? They're kind of forgetting something. Most of these ransomware actors are on the OFAC list. So basically, you're committing a crime if you send them a ransomware payment. The um, the Treasury has stated that if you send payments to somebody on the OFAC list, they will prosecute you to the full extent of the law. The FBI has said if you call them, they will treat you as a victim. So there is no downside in calling the FBI because then you become a victim as opposed to being the subject of prosecution. Now, Does it happen all that often? It depends on administrations. I think everybody in this call knows there's something called prosecutorial discretion, where prosecutors aren't required to prosecute every case. They determine which ones they go after and how hard and all. So there's a lot of latitude there, but I have never seen a downside in getting law enforcement involved. And let me emphasize, you want to build the well before you're thirsty. Invest in that relationship with your local FBI office long before you need them. Let me give you one other war story. A biopharmaceutical company I was dealing with in the Southwest of the United States. They got a call from the FBI one day. This company had seen their intellectual property end up in China, and they wanted to know how it was getting there. The FBI called them one day and said, we think one of your employees is actually working for the Chinese government. Like, what? Huh? And they told him and they briefed him on the information. And this pharma company actually looked at them and said, we know our IP has been showing up places on the other side of the world. We couldn't figure out how. This explains it. And they went they teamed up on a legal process and found out exactly what was going on, and it turned out to be true. So that company may have been saved from going out of business by having a relationship with the FBI. I see no downside to it.
If I
Thanks.
can add,
Go
it
ahead,
is
Edward.
better when you do this preventative, like building the relationship, because they have an entire structure for readiness. So they
Yep.
come, they talk to your team, they talk to your execs, and they have the proper approach. It's not that someone that comes and talks in police terms or tech terms. They really know how to engage. There are offices in the major cities that do that. And my experience in Seattle was excellent with the FBI team. They came to the professional association that we were members with, and they have materials to share. They have even in the user awareness campaigns that are fully built that you can replicate, and then you build the relationship, and it's a partnership. I also highly recommend.
Unfortunately, Alex and Eduardo, we've come to the end of our program. Do you have any closing remarks or advice?
So let me go first because I wanted to say that practice shows that we in technology cannot do this by ourselves. Long time ago we could, but not anymore. We saw all the major parts of the opportunities and risks that we can face if we are properly or not properly addressing cyber security incidents. So I highly recommend the partnership with the legal team, with the external experts, with the FBI, the local law enforcement, but mainly is for the technical teams not try to do this by themselves. It's really partnering with the legal teams, with the outside counsel, whatever is the setting that the organization decides to adopt. But this is really something for all of us. Cybersecurity is everyone's responsibility. Protecting the digital assets is everyone's responsibility, not only the technical team.
Thanks, Eduardo. Alex?
I think he said it all. The only thing I would say is happy holidays and connect on LinkedIn.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure to learn from you, Alex and Eduardo. Thank you so much for
I
your
always
time.
enjoy these calls. Thank you.
Me too. Take care.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.